Good evening. Okay, nice and loud. Good evening. I will now call the August 11th, 2026 meeting of the Ben Lapine School Board of Directors to order. I would like to introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate left, Directors Jen Lynch, Marcus LeGrand, Ross Tomlin, and Keena Chadwick. Director Shirley Olson is joining us virtually. To my immediate right, Superintendent Dr. Steve Cook, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Lisa Burke, and Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski. And I am Cameron Fisher, Vice Chair of the Board. Would you please stand, if you are able, remove your hats, and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now move to agenda item 3, review of the agenda. Dr. Cook, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Fellow board members, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing no requests for changes, we will proceed with the agenda as noticed. The board and district leadership value communication from students, families, staff, and community members as it helps to guide the work of Ben Lapine Schools. Public comment is just one of many avenues available to ensure this connection. Members of the public may always submit thoughts, questions, or concerns to the board via email, as well as in writing. Individual board members also make themselves available for phone, video, and/or in-person conversations. This said, just checking, do we have any? Okay, moving right along. We did not have anybody sign up to provide public comment for tonight's meeting. We will now move to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion regarding the documents in the consent agenda? Okay, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second that motion.
All right, thank you. Ross has made the motion, and Marcus, or Director LeGrand, has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion on the proposed motion? I will now call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Moving right along. I will now turn to Superintendent Cook for the consent for information.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fisher. This month, we have 30 policies in the consent for information, as well as an additional 8 policies that will be going out for review. So I want to distinguish the difference between those. 30 of these are simply simple modifications, or they're things that we, as you know, oftentimes we have to just adopt certain policies and put them into action. 8 of the policies we want to push out for public feedback. Those are separate than the 30 that we'll be adopting currently, and we'll talk about those a little later in the meeting. Included here today are policies and regulations that are a part of our alignment with current district practices, updated laws, regulations, and OSBA sample policy. Glad to answer any questions you might have.
I just had one quick question with regard to the policy on, I can't remember what it was called. Was it called unmanned aircrafts or something? So
Yeah,
drones.
okay, so
How
let's.
the district might, some examples of how the district might be utilizing drones.
Specifically, that is policy ECACB, unmanned aircraft systems. So what that specifically speaks to is a set of guidelines for the district how the district will administer the deployment of drones for any purpose, whether it's in service of operational systems, whether it's in as a classroom teaching tool, which right now we have currently allowed drone usage in the district for quite some time. We needed policies to better update those. An example you might be aware of is, for example, we've pushed a couple of videos out on social media where drones were used to capture time-lapse photography, for example, of Bend High, the raising of the first part of Bend High, and then watching phase one be developed in that over time. And that's one example. We've also used drones to film video for every single one of our schools for the website so that folks can see the school view from the sky of each of our 33 schools. And then I will say that we have quite a few classes in our high schools in which drones are a part of instruction. And so this really is a practice that's existed for years. This is just a policy that's going to do a better job of capturing the rules and regs we want drones to be governed by if they're going to be used in the district.
Thank you. Other thoughts, questions? All right. We will now hear from Dr. Burke for an update on Senate Bill 141.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fisher. Mr. Vargas, can you put up our 2 slides? Oh, I wish that was bigger. Okay, board members, oh, there we go. Look at that. Thank you. So today I want to just talk to you briefly about our targets that are related to Senate Bill 141. As a reminder, Senate Bill 141 asks us to target 7 measures that are outlined by the state. They are K-2 attendance, K-12 attendance, 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math, 9th grade on track, 4-year graduation, and 5-year completers. Those are measures that our state has said these will improve across our state in the next 12 years, and we have targets that are markers every 4 years. So as part of that, as part of Senate Bill 141, we are also coupled, our 197 school districts are grouped together in smaller groups. And those are what are called similar districts. So the way that they came up with similar districts is to recognize, generally, I'll state that they recognize the number of students who you serve that are part of historically underserved communities or are experiencing poverty, as well as your distance to a 2 or 4 year university. The idea there being that where universities exist, more resources into a community exist. And so we are grouped with 7 school districts. So that is our similar school district list on the left side there. So we are with Eugene, Greater Albany, Portland, Springfield, Tigard-Tualatin, and Westland, Wilsonville. It is not so important to know exactly who we're paired with, but it is more important to recognize that as a group, we have what is called a similar district target for each of those 7 measures. So this graph here demonstrates the statewide target and our similar district target and Ben Lapine's current state of that. So if you look across the top, we have K-2 regular attenders. The statewide target for that is that 82% in the next 4 years. We have 82% of our K-2 students attending with consistency to schools. In Ben Lapine, or in our similar districts, we are shooting for 79. So what that means is that as a whole, across our group of 7, we happen to be in a stage that is lower than the state, right? And so our similar district target, it does lag the statewide target, but that is basically built on this idea that all of these smaller groups need to move whatever is their current space forward in order for the state to grow at the rate that we would hope that we do on this 12-year mission. So for Ben Lapine, what that means is that we in 24-25, we're at 71.3% of our K-2 students were attending school regularly. we need to have in the next 4 years that we are effectively meeting our similar district target. And the state asks us to determine how then are you going to close this gap. So for us, that's a 7.7 percentage point gap. And the state says, how do you want to do that? There are some stipulations. You need to always have continuous growth. But you can do that in the way that you see fit. Another layer of this Senate Bill 141 is really a recognition that for school districts who for multiple years, they do not meet their targets, then the state has the authority to come in and direct our district spending. So what we want to do as a district, obviously, is continue the work that we feel is best for students and obviously meet our targets along the way. So what we have chosen to do is what I want to outline for you on the next slide. Joel, would you move to the next slide? And could you just focus in on that first line there? Yeah, thank you. So this outlines how are we going to get there for that 7.7%. So what you might think out of the gate is, well, 7.7% divided by 4 years, we have a certain amount, like an incremental amount that if we make those equal year over year, that's the amount that we should be growing. The challenge with that thinking is that if we meet, for example, if we say, okay, we're going to grow by 2%, then the next year 2%, then the next year 3%, then the next year 1%, there's a higher likelihood based on whatever goal we set that we potentially don't meet our goals, right? We all want to meet our goals, but there's a likelihood, there's a possibility that we wouldn't. So we want to minimize the number of years for which we wouldn't or have a potential that we wouldn't meet this goal. So the way that we have chosen to move this forward in that 7.7% in the case of K2 is to say we're going to have small increments for the first 3 years and have a larger increment for the 4th year, so that we have a high likelihood of meeting our growth targets for the next 3 years while the state is understanding this process across the state. And then even if we get to the end of our 4th year and, for example, we maybe miss the mark on 1 year, we've missed the mark on 1 year rather than missing the mark on 4 years, at which time directed spending comes into play. So that has been the thinking around this. Very transparently, that is thinking that is about understanding the system and maximizing the likelihood that we are successful with the system. And along the way, we know that there are certain things that we are striving for, and we want to continue that mission and vision. So we are happy to shoot beyond any of these goals that we have. And that really, frankly, is our expectation. But from a standpoint of what is on the paper for the state, we want to maximize the likelihood that we meet the state's goals for the most of those years in those 4-year period. Okay, so that is the thinking behind each of those years, step by steps. And you'll notice in this is a very number-heavy graph, but really this outlines for each of those 7 measures, we have a goal for all of our students, as well as a goal for our focal group of students. Focal group of students is not something that we make up. That is based on the state giving us information about those of our students who are experiencing poverty and those who are historically underserved. So this outlines how we are moving that forward throughout all of those measures. I will note here also, Joel, would you go back one? We have one of our measures is at the very bottom of this, and this is our what's called a local option metric. So we have 5 local option metrics from which we can choose to monitor, to choose something else to monitor. And you all know as board members in Ben Lapine, we actually, as a board, you all have already chosen several other measures that we continue to measure. But the local option metric that we are choosing in Ben Lapine for this 4-year cycle is multiliteracy proficiency. The reason that we're choosing that is because that is an area that we feel pretty good in It's an area that we are excited about continuing to move forward. And again, from understanding the system situation, there's a higher likelihood that we may get to those outcomes than some of the other measures. Now, for us, to some degree, it's irrelevant because you all as a board have decided that you are interested in post-secondary readiness as well as career and workforce readiness, which are two of the other options. Another option is fifth grade science. And a last option is academic growth as measured by our new assessment system. So those marks have yet to be determined. So the reason that I'm sharing this with you today is that the state asks that we submit by August 31st all of what we have said are our targets. So the board is not today approving anything. This is more in our operational pieces, but we do need to make you aware of these. And as a reminder, as part of Senate Bill 141, you will have 3 times a year a report on progress related to our new interim assessments that we can comment on growth about. Okay, happy to take any questions about that.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. Thank you, Dr. Burke. Appreciate it. Quick question. Will all the schools have individual goals based on these things here to be able to reach as well? The other thing is, are we going to look at consolidating best practices to be able to help possibly be able to get everybody on the same page? And then also, what is the process we're going to use in terms of identifying students, in terms of make sure we can, get everyone up to where we need to be?
The answer is yes, yes, and it's cloudy. So the first answer is yes, each school has a target that they are shooting for. Now at elementary, their targets that they're paying most attention to are attendance and third grade reading. In the middle school, the targets that they're paying most attention to are 8th grade math is the state measurement, but that's hard to sort of have a rallying cry for your entire school when you have like 2 teachers in a middle school teaching math. And so they are considering things like the number of students who are on track for future success, so minimizing numbers of D's and F's and continuing to look at outcomes on the state assessment. At high school, our target is both attendance as well as graduation, and some upstream indicators of that are related to 9th grade on track, et cetera. So our MAPS assessment are some of those assessments that we will continue to watch and monitor as we move forward, but each school will have goals that they are working on. Your second question was about consolidating and understanding what are some of our common practices that we want to move forward. Today was our leadership launch, and we talked a lot about what we were referring to as way power. And our way power, sort of our pathway to get to our outcomes, is to all line up on our strategic initiatives, some of which are very directly related to instructional outcomes. And then the last piece is measuring and understanding students who are doing very well in our systems as well as those who are not. So the reason that I share that it's cloudy is that when you look at that second page and it had that focal group, one of the focal groups that the state uses is related to students experiencing poverty. We actually are not given those data to our school district. Like, the state is not saying to us, these are your students who are experiencing poverty. What we can point to is some historically underserved groups. We can point to just anecdotally students that we know that need more services and supports. But the data sets are not completely clear. And so, yes, we are interested in continuing to monitor and watch for students who may need more support, but it's not necessarily because that is funneled to us from the state. That is more because we'll have some unique system or some consistent systems, such as like multi-tiered systems of support that would allow us to catch students who need more. Other questions?
So Dr. Burke, just to clarify, the state will look at how we do over 4 years, and then we'll come in and do something, but they're
They
not gonna do
actually
anything every year.
yeah, they actually are monitoring us yearly. And so after 2 years of not meeting whatever your targets may be, then they will have some comprehensive conversations with you. And that often leads to what's known as direct coaching or some area of coaching. And so sometimes that engages them in looking at our plans, moving forward, et cetera. If you have 4 years of not meeting those targets, then the state may say, hey, we're going to actually direct your funds to be used in this way.
So much of this is connected to what's already happening, I think. Any concerns that are jumping out at you that you'd want to share with us that either one of you thinks?
Yeah, I would say the biggest concerns right off the bat, like these are all indicators that have been agreed upon statewide that are ways to measure systems and schools. And I want to make sure that we are not forgetting about student success is a primary driver of what we're also doing. And so I want us to keep track of that. That is a conversation statewide. This is not a, we don't want to lose individual student planning. We don't want to lose life and career readiness for students. We want to make sure pathways are robust and exist for our students. And these are system points to check in. And we're open to that conversation, 100%. Number one, that's my first and biggest concern, is that we don't go back to, I was an administrator during the times of No Child Left Behind, and I do not want us to become sacrificing students' personal goals and aspirations for the measures of the system. Those two things have to be separated. The second one, and I think this is a temporary concern, and I think we'll work it out, which is part of the strategy for incremental growth being staged the way we have is that the state of Oregon has never done this before. And this will be a tremendous lift for the state of Oregon and specifically for the Oregon Department of Education. And so to some extent, what we don't want to do is, we know our goals, we know the important things that we need to do to provide kids for the opportunity for teaching and learning, and we need to meet all of these, most certainly. However, as we're building the accountability system over time, we should not cause that to become a distraction from the goals of the local school district. And so very much strategically, we are focused on doing both. And my concern is, right now, I was on a call today for 2 hours in which the conversation was, and we've talked about this on this board with this group, is that these data don't come to you in nice little tight packages in May where you can look at and analyze. Verification of graduation data takes 4 months. Verification of OSAS state assessment takes 5 months. That creates a dynamic in which we're going to have dates of which that date for that particular data set might be 6 months different than the next one down. And so that's real operational challenges that the state is going to have to navigate. Those are two concerns that I say are real, that we are going to learn over time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think sort of a similar vein of thinking is just, I want our school leaders to spend their time on doing what they believe is the most advantageous things for outcomes for kids. And so while the state is figuring out their stuff, I want us to meet the mark and do all of those things, but I don't want that to be the driver. We are driving forward with the recognition that we've got work to do. Those scores are not crushing it. Those scores are not things that we should feel high levels of success for. Oregon's got a long way to go, and we are up for the challenge. So that's what I want our focus to be on.
I have a question about the other school districts that, I guess, the cohort that we're sitting in. Has there been, or will there be any, collaboration with them in terms of like tactical, you had shared like, right, we're going to move incrementally and at first, but I'm curious like if there is going to be working with these other districts.
There is working with these other districts only insofar as that's how we do our work. So I meet with the other deputy superintendents in many of these districts, and we're talking about these types of things. That said, it's not like the state says, now here's the time for you 7 to meet and you need to jam on these certain things. So yes, but I think in this first 4 years, we're gonna learn a lot. And then there may be reasons to sort of coalesce and start to recognize what things were most advantageous as we move on this path toward accountability.
One of the things I would add about the grouping, it's its own beast. The state undertook grouping districts in the state, and I'm going to use a metaphor of like if you've ever run a 5K or a half marathon or a marathon, you don't, if you're a 4-hour marathoner, you don't go get in the very front of the line with the folks that are going to be running 2 hours and 5 minutes. You get grouped in what your pace is most likely like. And so the state actually grouped, we had no say in how we were grouped. The state grouped the districts all across 197 districts based upon their demographics, based upon the property tax rate, believe it or not, based upon your distance from the nearest 4-year educational institution. Like there's lots of kind of bizarre criteria they used. And that's our, if you will, our pacing group. And so part of our expectation is as a collective, those 8 districts are all expected to meet those targets for each of those criteria based upon what they're currently at and where the desired outcome is eventually at. So it's rather than strategically saying, now you go plan together and you go train for your marathon together, it is the idea of how does this all come out, shake out each year individually, and at the end of 4 years, did you do what it was? Now, that being said, I can tell you 197 superintendents and school district administrators are meeting very regularly to talk about what are strategies and what are ways that we're going to be able to accomplish this, because no district wants another district to go into district jail.
Hey, Director Olson, I don't want to miss you in case you have any thoughts, questions.
No, I just acknowledge that 141 has put us in a whole different race to improve student achievement. And it's a challenge. There's no question about it. But I know that as each of our school administrators look at their own data, they'll be able to identify kids, students, one by one, who need extra support to bring up their achievement and whatever the category is. So it's a huge planning issue and a huge challenge for individual schools. And I think we're up to the challenge. I have hope.
Thank you.
I have one more question. Are we going to be able to track how much time is associated to SB 141? So like when it comes to like the next biennium, where like unfunded mandates, we've spent X amount of dollars just on this.
I love that, and I think that is a brilliant point of action. That is, I can tell you that already the conversation that is happening in that meeting that I had today with other superintendents was if we could get what is the amount of investment, not just time, but the amount of resource that it is going to take for all 197 school districts to hit the individual targets that are being set and demonstrate that in a funding model over time. Because now what you're saying is this is where we want to go. We have strategies and plans for how we're going to get there. And here are the resources committed to ensure that we can deliver upon that. And so that is the right question. And I appreciate that question so much because we only have one example in the entire state right now, and that has been a focus point for years in Oregon, and that is graduation rates. And it's been the focal point for now 15 years, I believe, and it is the single one indicator that the districts, all districts across the state can demonstrate a committed improvement over those 15 years because it has been a priority that has been agreed upon. Similarly, if we could do that with these, I think we can see the same kind of outcomes over the next 10 to 12 years.
Your question, though, is really important because all of these measures are not created equal. So if you look at 8th grade math right now, we have like 40% are doing well on that measure, right? And even at the state level, the mark is very low, but the growth is almost double. So what is interesting about that is when you think about our measures related to early literacy and advancing literacy, what came with that as a focal area was a whole lot of money that was related to early literacy that had to be spent on early literacy. We do not see that parallel with mathematics, but we are asked to make double the growth in mathematics with zero investment. So while it is absolutely of interest to all of us as educators that our students improve in the area of mathematics, it is important to recognize those investments and where they're put and how they affect outcomes.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. Any other thoughts, questions before we move forward?
I got a question for later, but I'll get it to you later.
Okay. I will now turn to Dr. Cook to present the administrative policies and regulations the district is reviewing.
All right, in your packet, you will see 8 policies that we're going to be pushing out. Just as a reminder, in July, we pushed out quite a few fundraising-related policies. Those are still out for review. We've slowed that process down quite a bit. A shout out to Kinsey Martin, who's had multiple listening sessions and I guess they're not listening. What are we calling those? Engagement sessions that we're talking through with PTOs and any group that's interested in fundraising or is affiliated with fundraising in our district to talk through kind of the premise that lives in those policies and seeking direct feedback. And that process is open and will continue to be open for a while. We hope to bring those policies back September or so and possibly continue that, but also bring, put those into place for October. That's our goal. And I will tell you, just as we've got some folks who are like, slow this ride down about these fundraising policies, we got some people who are pushing us like, let's get going. We have things we want to fundraise for and you all are holding us up. So that's engagement on that has been fantastic. All right, so now in this month, you will see 8 different policies, including talented and gifted students. If you recall, we got a lot of kudos on our last TAG plan. We needed to update our policy to match the way that our new TAG plan was being written. Additionally, IKJ, our artificial intelligence, has also been updated to align with our current district practices on how we are going to use AI tools and the use of AI tools specifically for instruction and how they're going to be used for grading and student feedback. There's a lot of interest in that, as you well know. All 6 other policies are related to our technology services and have been updated to align with our current practices and OSBA sample policies. We're pushing those out and we are opening them for community feedback and looking forward to getting that feedback. Any questions you might have?
All right. Let's see. Thank you. We will now hear the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fisher. At this time, I would like to share with you, actually, much of what I wanted to start with was the leadership launch, and we've kind of talked about that almost all already. I will just tell you quickly, we had about 200 people there. We had all of our building administrators, all of our office managers, and all of our operational leaders at our leadership launch today. And I'll just tell you that the 2 things that we wanted to emphasize today was this idea that we need to align our efforts, number 1, and have standards for everything to signify improvement. And whether you are a school leader chasing 3rd grade reading, you're a school leader chasing 8th grade math, or attendance measures, or you're a department that is establishing KPIs for the very first time, and KPIs stand for key performance indicators, that is the foundation of this leadership launch. And we're in day 1 of 3. And we got a lot of feedback that the message resonated. The second part of the message today was about hope and how we are purveyors of hope as leaders in this district, but hope without a plan doesn't solve anybody's problem. So what does it look like to build an actionable plan that is going to demonstrate the pathway to improvement for those measures that you seek? 2 more days to go on that. Please feel free to come if you'd like, but I think most of the work now is going to be on getting them directed into each individual department's and schools' delivery of their own plans. My second item I want to talk about with the superintendent's report is just a whole lot of gratitude for our team and for you all who participated in sign delivery. We delivered over 600 signs, almost 700 signs across this district. And I don't think anybody got bit by a dog this year. Pretty exciting. We did have some adventures, and we have some things to work out, but that's about 50% more than last year. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've talked with team members about the porch conversations with students or parents about how proud their families were about student success. And so just a lot of fun with that, and appreciate everybody's participation. Third item, just a shout out to those of you that could come to our last Bend High tour. Just a reminder that is phase 1 that you're looking at right now. Phase 2 is construction is underway, and over the next 2 years, you'll see a lot of conversation, starting to see that possibly using drones again, starting to see those pieces go up and see Bend High in its full glory once that's finished. And a part of that, I will say, I will have more to talk about. Now's not the time, but as you know, there's a Bend High auditorium conversation that's going to happen along with that construction of phase 2. And so we'll bring that back to this group, and we'll talk to you about how that's going to look. Last but not least, I will tell you that, believe it or not, it's time for us to start talking about sites and facilities reviews, so that we've got this runway of about 2 years that we anticipate getting feedback from all of our leaders, all of our schools, all of our departments across the district in, number one, revamping the sites and facilities process and talking about what does it look like to talk about community resources that we currently have. We have $900 million worth of insured buildings that we are protecting and investing in. And so what is our responsibility with that? And what do we need to do to keep the community's investment whole? And so that process is very robust, happens at every single school, happens at every single department in this district. And it takes us quite some time. That's why it's a 2-year runway. Looking forward to your engagement, looking forward to the community's engagement on that as we build that out over the next 2 years. I'm glad to answer any question.
In terms of sites, facilities, looking at the K through 2 attendance rate, are we ever considering with, like, we talked about declining enrollment and all those different pieces, is there consideration to maybe possibly have some of those sites have preschools to be able to hopefully get to the students earlier to hopefully improve those attendance records? Because we've known historically, or if you look at, there's information or data out there that states if kids start to get into the process of understanding education earlier, they have a tendency to be able to want to attend, especially when they feel it's worthwhile.
Boy, is that the right question. I can tell you this. We currently have very good partnerships with several groups in the community on providing supports after school and providing some supports before school in certain locations. There will be spaces in schools across the district as our enrollment stabilizes. I think the question then what would it look like to operationalize a preschool? What would it look like to operationalize opportunities for students, especially with the federal deregulation of Head Start now becoming a very real conversation, and understanding what that could do potentially to impact our students in our community, K through 5. We do a nice job of tracking those students. We do a nice job of knowing those students coming in. I think right now what we don't have is a funding source to establish that as our own provider. What might that look like? Whether we were going to decide that might be something that we would talk to our community about in a levy, or what would it look like to build partnerships and get grants? those are all real conversations for this community to take on and to consider whether or not that's a pathway we would be interested. But there will be places that we could host these kinds of resources in our schools.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Superintendent Cook. We will now open the floor for board comment. And how about we start with Director Olson?
I really don't have any comments, except that I'm looking forward to the first few days of school, and we usually schedule some time for each of us to visit some schools and just be there and say, how you doing? What does it look like? What do you need?
Thank you. Director Chadwick, would you like to start down there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who helped prepare and put on today's leadership launch. When I heard we're going to be talking about hope, I had to take a step back. I don't know, I'm East Coast person, right? Like realist. And I will say that, the snippets that we did see from Dr. Hellman and learning more about the science behind it, I was drinking out of the water fountain. So in addition to today's leadership launch, I've also been attending the Culture of Care Summer Institute with the High Desert ESD. And they have topics from, leading with care, a liberatory design lab for systemic change, having hard conversations, neurodivergent affirming schools. And it's really getting me excited for the new school year. It's really providing space to think a little differently, maybe in one direction or the other, which I think is just enough to see a different trajectory. So I really appreciate everyone who's been working so hard on this and for helping us start the school year on the right foot. So thank you.
Well, I really enjoyed the leadership launch this morning as well. I especially enjoyed having students there. That was fabulous. They were so articulate, and it's just always great having students engaged in the process. I really enjoyed Lisa's presentation on hope. I didn't know you could get that involved with hope, but it was pretty involved and great conversations. I thought there was a lot of good positive energy in the room, and that is a great way to start the year. So I appreciate being invited to those kind of sessions so we can be see the energy in the room and hear the things that are being discussed. So thank you.
For me, I think I really like the fact that we have SB 141. Some people may not like it, but I kind of like it because I think what it's going to make this state do is put a mirror up to look in the mirror and say, okay, where are we really at? And I think this reimagining or reset that we need is going to be really, really critical for us to have some success in the state. And I think, if we can do that, I think we're going to be just fine. Also, I think as a board, it's going to allow us to be able to look at our visions and our strategic initiatives and all the things that we do to make sure they are aligned with many of the things that we're working on. I think that's going to be critical to some of this as well. But the thing that I think is going to do more than anything is challenge many of the leaders in our schools. Because I think hopefully to remind them that they're curious and they have to be inquisitive and there's some processes and some things they're going to do well. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they bring to the table because it's going to allow us to see how people dig in and really buy into what we're talking about and what's going on. I think ultimately what it's doing, and I think you can talk about this, Dr. Burke, is the understanding of Sankofa and what it does is bringing all the good things that we do forward and utilize them to be able to come up with best practices to really create the culture and stuff that we want. And it's going to challenge some people. It's going to challenge a lot of people in our leaders, and it's going to be tough. But I think they're up for the fight, and hopefully we can be able to get to where we need to be. But at the same time, too, hopefully people, if they do need supports, if they need resources to be successful, hopefully they'll be willing to reach out to all of us because we're all in this together to figure this out. So hopefully take that opportunity to do so.
I'll just echo the thanks for our invitation to today's leadership kickoff, and the gratitude for the centering of student voice and student outcomes in that event. That was, a great start to the year, and definitely aligns with how this board sees its role in guiding the district. I'm ready for school to start. I know there are teachers who are ready to get back at it. It's shocking how boring summer is when there's so much to do every fall. So I'm really looking forward to getting back in the building and getting to work on all of this. And then just lastly about that sign project, that has been a remarkable thing for the last month, being able to drive through Bend's streets and see those signs on every block. It actually speaks to the strength of our students, that their talent and skill is not bound by their geography, and speaks to the strength of our teachers. Our district did not share publicly how successful our teachers were in getting students 4s and 5s on those AP exams. It is remarkable. It's an outstanding statistical success that we are driving in our high schools. And I am so proud to have my kids at one of them.
Thank you. I just wanted to share a couple of things. I had the opportunity to take a tour of the Stage 1 completion of Ben High, and really phenomenal. Everything from the art to repurposed wood tables created or built by residents at the prison, I think at Deer Ridge, and just the energy of everybody who was taking the tour and the excitement and the Veterans Memorial. A lot of it just was just a pleasure to be a part of, to tour. Also, delivering some signs. I didn't deliver as many as I'd hoped, but the opportunity to do that and to chat with some parents right when we got the alarm, or the third, third go, what is it? Or level 3 evacuation, yes. Which is my daughter who was helping me was, why are we going toward the fire? Well, we just got to get these last couple signs delivered. But it was a real pleasure to be a part of that this year. And then also recently took a tour with a couple other board members of the Hayden Homes Amphitheater Sustainability Setup, and watched the green team in action, and just phenomenal what they've done in the last 10, 12 years of, now they're at, I think, over 93% waste diversion for their amphitheater. And from very basic things up to really high level waste diversion. And that was kind of inspirational to see. And I appreciate our new sustainability coordinator, Noelle, coordinating that for us. And I just really appreciated that kind of breath of fresh air, that we can start in different ways. And we already do have a few schools who are doing some great work with composting and reusable dishware and silverware. And I hope we can see more in the future for our schools around the district. And otherwise, I think I'll pause there and shift to our next regular business meeting is scheduled for September 8th. With that said, this meeting is adjourned.